Hey everyone, Stablecoin, the latest crypto craze, here on TechStrong Gang. Happy Friday. Man, do I love saying happy Friday. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to our Friday edition of TechStrong Gang. I'm Alan Schimmel of TechStrong. We've got a great lineup. We're going to talk about crypto and AI anxiety and maybe a report from the field at Reinforce. But let me introduce you to our gang members who are going to be talking to us today. We'll start, I guess, out west. And we're going to go northwest here to my friend Fred Wilmot of the tech team. Hey, Fred, how are you?
Great, brother. How you doing?
It's good. It's good to see you, my friend. Did I tell you it's been a pleasure having you on this show? We haven't talked enough in too long, and it's great to see you as often now. So
Me too.
Thank you.
Me too, 100%.
Staying out west, we have our Silicon Valley dynamic duo of John Swartz and Lisa Martin. We're going to go with Lisa first. Hi, Lisa. It's great to see you. I haven't seen you on here in maybe a week or two, so it's so fantastic.
I know. It's great to see you too, Alan. I actually went to Spain, to Malaga last week for Futurum to speak on a panel on modern marketing. So that's why I was out last week. It was, and to your point about coming home from Italy, it's always hard to leave Europe. It's such a fantastic place.
Especially this time of year. Absolutely. But we're glad to have you back. John, you haven't really gone anywhere exotic, huh?
I used to live in London for a while. And that was a long time ago, though. My daughter
I was talking recently. I mean, other than maybe going to a Giants game.
You don't think Las Vegas is no. That's next week.
It's exotic.
Hey, I am excited. Saturday, I'm going to go see the Giants in Denver to see where they're going. That should be interesting how that plays out. But yeah, next week at Las Vegas and HPE. Can't wait.
Oh, okay. So you're headed to the city over there. Okay. And then moving on from the West Coast, we'll take a quick stop high in the Rocky Mountains. He's not high yet. It's pretty early in the morning. Mitch Ashley, Futurum analyst. Hey, Mitch.
It is Colorado. Don't count that out. But good to be here. Good to be here.
Good to have you on. I know you've been traveling a bit. And then finally, still waiting for his Yankees to win a game, though they did score a run or two last night and then blow it on some errors. Mike Vizard.
I did go to an exotic place this week with Mitch. So, Philadelphia, got to tell you, from a New York perspective, it's exotic.
It was tropical, rainy,
Adrian. All right.
Yeah, they did play some Rocky music.
So, guys, let's jump into it. Mike, Congress is taking up some legislation, maybe on crypto. And, of course, our president is a big fan of it because he's lining his pockets with it. But now it looks like the big retailers are saying, hey, maybe there's something here. What's this story about?
Yeah, I think this is going to happen and now has some bipartisan support in Congress. So it looks like the Genius Act is going to pass. And some retailers like Walmart and folks and Amazon are trying to figure out, well, can I create a stable coin that is pegged to some sort of more stable currency? And that might help them with their fees for transactions and all kinds of things that they might wind up doing with that, because you probably use it for international trade. But Lisa, what's going on here? Is every company in the world going to have a stable coin?
It's so interesting. This was a really fun one to dig into, guys, because, Mike, you mentioned the Genius Act. That would create basically this legal framework for stablecoin use in the U.S. And with that said, there's always pros and cons, and there's skeptics of stablecoins. One, is there potential security risks here? Is there regulatory uncertainty? But basically, a stablecoin is a type of cryptocurrency that is aligned or pegged to a government-issued currency. Either the dollar, could be gold. There's some interesting use cases here that I think Walmart, Amazon, and other retailers are exploring. Payments, as well as trading, investing. You mentioned international, cross-border payments, even access to like financial services are supposed to be the stablecoin less volatile than tokens like the traditional Bitcoin, Ethereum. And what we're seeing is retailers like Amazon, big ones, obviously, Walmart, really strongly considering stablecoin as a way to reduce their dependence on credit card networks like Visa, MasterCard. There's so many billions in interchange fees on prepaid and debit cards. I think the most recent number was 32 billion in the year 2021, which is the most recent data. So it's looking like what retailers are wanting to do is really stablecoins as part of a broader shift away from the costly and those legacy systems. So it's an interesting time, but of course, the security factor is high there, especially as we look at the high volumes of card transactions and the cash that the Walmarts and the Amazons handle. Will this allow them to save billions of dollars in fees and really provide that security that the consumers are going to demand?
You know, it's interesting. I've been involved in the payment card industry for a number of years. I have a lot of friends who have been in that industry. And then, you know, when the whole PCI thing came out, I was doing some, you know, PCI work around it, so I'm very familiar. Look, every merchant hates the fees. And what you don't realize, it's a great business because not only do they charge fees of the merchant, but they charge on the consumer's end too, right? Your bank pays you. So you got a credit card from Chase or Citi or Wells. They pay a fee on that end of it. So the credit card and payment processors make money on both sides of the street. It's a crazy business. I'm almost amazed that the payment card industry lobby is letting this thing have any oxygen at all, right? Because, you know, between Amex and Visa and MasterCard and Discover, which is now part of Capital One, was Diners, you know, those are some pretty big honchos that you're trying to cut out of the trowel here. And my bet is sooner or later, they're too smart to be cut out of this trowel. Sooner or later, they'll find a way back into the trowel and to feed.
That's what I'm thinking, Alan, is what is the credit card company's angle to get in on this, right? They're not going to let it swing by and suddenly they're losing their fees. That's not going to happen. This is going to be a vicious fight for those dollars.
Would they issue their own stable coin? I mean, what the hell? Amex could have its own stable coin.
Well, you know, they're Expedia and airlines are looking into stablecoin. I think even with the banks are considering joining a merchant-led consortium. So yeah, they're all going to look for an angle. I mean, and with Amazon's interest in participation, I wonder what Apple and eventually Google and others do.
So what is stablecoin pegged to that makes it stable? Gold?
You can pick a currency. You can pick a U.S. currency or any other currency for that matter, I think. And so basically, its value isn't tied just to the belief system and what you see
Not
with a
as
digital currency
speculative,
today.
like his Bitcoin
Right.
and stuff. Let me ask you another.
That's got treasury backing, right? Is that right?
Yes. It's backed by cash reserves or short-term U.S. Treasuries, so it
Oh,
makes
it
it less
is.
volatile.
So then
Yeah,
it would be
yeah,
backed
that's
by
what-
the
It's
by
basically
dollars.
it's a close equivalent to cash, and it's designed to maintain a fixed value. Essentially, that's the theory.
So it's not the speculative investment kind of thing. We're not going to have stable coin mining, are we?
I don't know, but can we have Walmart money? I mean, am I going to get instead of dollars, I'm going to get Walmart greenbacks? Is that how this is
So
going to
I get Walmart money. You know, so if you are a Amex Platinum holder, you get like a free Walmart Plus membership, which is like their version of Prime. And you get like a certain amount of Walmart dollars you could spend with it. Not a lot, don't get me wrong. You know, but hey, stuff in Walmart's cheap.
So I'm going to throw one thing out here, Alan. You know there's some kind of a arbitrage. This is like a long distance carrier. How many minutes did you use of your service versus that service, and balancing that? You know, there's some kind of a arbitrage or bridging network that the credit cards are going to be, because not everything's going to shift to stablecoin. They're going to support stablecoin on their platform, on their cards. There'll be fees involved for, translating between stablecoin and whatever your credit card balance or, cash dollar. There's money in there to be made, I think, for the credit card companies.
There's two things here that I think are important to think as positives, though. One, if you look at the credit card challenge, your banking challenge for things like mass compromise and knowing where and when your card was compromised and what effects that has, account takeovers, point of sale and point of compromise activities, all of that becomes a much faster analysis problem. All of that becomes something that is owned by whomever owns the stablecoin. So you really democratize a lot of that. Small businesses that want to get in the game of doing transactions don't have to pay Visa member bank, costs just to take transactions, right? So, there's a lot of where there's probably still going to be a ton of fees, right? Which fees are you willing to pay? Which ones mitigate your risk? There's a lot of value to having something in between what my mom wants to invest in crypto and something stable you could actually operate. And I think there's a big plus here to be had possibly for consumers. And Walmart's going to save a bunch of money in fees and give Alan more money.
And who's going to back up when something, the vendor merchant doesn't deliver and you want to go back and say, don't pay that, right? Like you do with the credit card or with PayPal. So there's a lot of things to be worked out. I think if they have that, then I think there'll be more adoption by the consumers, at least.
They have said that the transactions are supposed to be much faster, and obviously everyone demands speed these days, so potentially could clear instantly, which would be an advantage for the consumer, could be an advantage for companies that have really big global supply chains or large amount of transactions, so that speed could be a factor, a good factor.
All right. Fred, do you think we'll see stable coin jacking the way we see crypto jacking, and we'll see all these kind of fake Walmart stable coins out there that somebody hacked together by, hacking into a cloud server somewhere and using some illicit CPUs and GPUs to create some fake money?
Oh, for sure. But I think that that problem is infinitely more trackable than the problem we have today. So, being able to find out where people are doing which particular things, which banks and which branches are, handling the crypto behind it. There's a lot more traceability here than there is in, just plain cash. So there's a lot of value, I think, in being able to do that. And like everything, there will be a whole suite of new, interesting phenomenon for different ways to defraud. But, I think that's early days in anything is going to be that. Like Alan mentioned, the payment industry, right, has had a lot of that. A 6% gain on mass compromise is billions of dollars when an organization can start to deflate that. So you see a bunch of that, but I think the interesting part will be how rapid that's going to change versus what we have today. So it's maybe more like Fight Club taking on some real proportions here. I don't know about Equifax and the rest of the players there, but it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Let me introduce some geopolitics into this.
I was waiting for that.
No, I'm not going where you may think,
No,
John.
I was going to bring it up too. But.
Well, you bring yours up. So my thought, though, is it's something, Mike, you said, well, you could just plug anything in the back end as as what we're going to base it on. Is this a way for the world to get off the dollar? Do we lose, because many economists, many, financial people will tell you that the United States' biggest asset today is that we're in a dollar-based economic world. And if coins like this become the de facto standard and the back end of what they're pegged to is frankly portable, do we lose our advantage there? And is that really something that we should call a genius act?
Maybe. I think, you're going to see a lot of countries anchor these things to the yuan, right?
To the what?
To the Chinese dollar.
To the yuan, or yeah, maybe.
Right. So I think, so I think they're all going to break that. Do you think someday, somebody's going to get a ransomware demand for, 1 million Walmart stablecoins?
Yes.
That's inevitable.
That's a distinct possibility. Yeah.
Lifetime supply of Walmart dollars.
Just what you need. Just what you need. John, where were you going with this?
Oh, I was going to go down a different path. This is much better. I won't. I was just wondering when we're going to see the Trump organization announce their stable coin.
Well, they have their coin. They could just say it's a stable coin because he's a stable genius.
Mm-hmm. Right. It will be tied to the valuation of Mar-a-Lago, though, right?
Priceless.
Yeah. Spoken from
but
a critic.
let's not go down that branch of the river. Look, a lot of people have predicted something like this a long time coming, right? And the other thing is, who knows, is Congress really going to, yes, there's some bipartisan support for it. But by the time the lobbyists get done picking at the carcass here, is it going to be what we think it's going to be? That would be my biggest take on it.
Right. Or will it be a shell?
Mm-hmm. Anything else? All right. If not, let's take a break here on TechStrong Gang. We're going to come back and talk about AI anxiety. That's not a new movie by Mel Brooks or anything. You're watching TechStrong Gang.
All right, folks, we're back. And yes, there's a lot of AI anxiety suddenly in the world. Microsoft is now reportedly going to fire a bunch of salespeople and replace them with AI. The CEO of Amazon put out a memo saying that the company will definitely be smaller in the age of AI. And every time you turn around lately, John, somebody's laying somebody off and blaming it on AI. And you have a story talking about the anxiety that the average person is feeling up on techstrong.ai, where seems like we're evenly split as to whether or not we're afraid of AI or we think AI might be a good thing. So,
Right. Yeah. There was a national poll that NBC News put out Wednesday, and they were asking a bunch of questions, but two of the questions that stuck out that were tech related were AI related questions. And what they found was this profound split in the way Americans look at AI. Either they are embracing it or they are not touching it at all. And I think what is in play, and I think what's been in play, not just with this poll, but just in general, is this familiarity. So people are much more familiar with this new technology than they have been with previous waves. And I think it breeds equal amounts of fear and fascination. Like the companies these people work for, they have strong feelings and attitudes about AI. And the more they find out about it, the more anxious they become. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, we see this at the corporate level. Now we're seeing it at the rank and file level. And what I think is eventually going to happen is people are going to learn to live with it. They're going to learn it's not as scary as they think it is. Like previous waves of technology, there's always this fear of change, especially among older people like me. But once somebody is exposed to it, then they become huge proponents of it. So I think maybe that's how it plays out. But the other thing that's going on is that we've got a lot of attention, as Mike points out, to tech companies that are looking to be more productive and looking for more productivity. So they're going to get rid of their employees. We're seeing it among media companies like Business Insider. Even the New York Times is using AI much more thoroughly than we previously knew, according to the Washington Post. We're moving in that direction. And again, change foments fear. And I think it's just going to accelerate, like everything has with AI. There's a book that just came out called Empire of AI. It's basically about Sam Altman and OpenAI. It's written by a former Wall Street Journal reporter who now works, I believe, at The Atlantic. It's a really interesting read. It got a lot of attention. And basically, this is something I want to throw out to y'all. The author's point is that these AI companies, the dominant ones, are going to be the new empires, and they're going to be very similar to old empires. They're going to chew up a lot of resources. They're going to affect profoundly the working force, and they're going to profoundly change our societal norms across so many gamuts, good and bad. So again, this is an understandable reaction to something that is going to, if not rule our lives, have a huge influence on our lives and everything we do.
Lisa, I think there's something wrong in the tone of these things and these announcements. And part of the thing about AI was it will make people more efficient and will be freed up to go do more things that have interesting value. And that's all goodness on the face of it. And yet, it seems like, every time you turn around now, somebody's talking about laying people off because of AI. So what are they, it doesn't seem like they're actually doing the uplift part as much as they're just focusing on reducing costs and bottom line, pushing this through the bottom line rather than thinking about a top line.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike, on that. When Andy Jassy came out the other day, CEO of Amazon, and said that there will be less jobs in the age of AI, I thought, the message that came out just a few months ago from the World Economic Forum State of Jobs report for 2025 talked about and I'm not going to remember the actual numbers and millions, but I think the net loss plus net gain of jobs in the next 5 years was projected to be 78 million new jobs created. And that narrative isn't getting out there. I think Amazon could have done it, from your point on tone, Mike, I think they could have done a better job of that. I've always been glass half full when it comes to AI. I get to see a lot of the positives that it does, but also when I do iHeartRadio, I get to talk to the consumer audience. There's a lot of fear out there. So this poll did not surprise me at all. For example, it varies by industry. I've got family members that are in the entertainment industry and they're trying to break into Hollywood and they're terrified of AI. Obviously, there were huge issues and strikes and things in the last couple of years because of that. But I think the messaging needs to be clear on, let's identify where the cons are and the negatives and what types of jobs are already being replaced versus what the opportunities are that it's going to give to job seekers, regardless of industry. I think that message is just not clear. And to John, to your point, and to the poll's point, people are either all in on AI or completely against it. There doesn't seem to be a middle ground yet. I don't know if we're going to get there anytime soon, but but then I talk to people in different age groups, like my mom's best friend, who's almost 80, who is a huge fan of ChatGPT, uses it for inspiration on different things that she does in her life. And I thought that was a really cool example of somebody that in a different generation that could be scared of it, retired, so not worried about it taking over jobs, but sees some value in what it can deliver for her life.
The word you used, Lisa, that really stood out to me as perfect word is messaging. The messaging's been so bad from the tech industry. It's as Mike mentioned, it's Amazon, it's Microsoft, I think Meta has made it clear that people are going to be replaced by AI. I mean, it just throughout the industry, there's this almost gleeful anticipation of what AI can do in place of human beings. And I don't think that is the intent, but that is the takeaway that we're getting from a lot of these companies. Even Anthropic, of course, they're going to build up the fear as they try to raise money. But Dario, it's the CEO there, has talked famously about losing half the white collar jobs because of AI related technology within 5 years. So they got to do a better job. And as long as we keep hearing NVIDIA and Salesforce and ServiceNow and everyone else talking about these digital workforces as if humans are just a small part of the equation, we're going to keep getting this reaction.
I think the other part of it too is that it's in an environment of constant opinionating about sort of the dystopian part of AI, and I don't mean in a true sci-fi sense, but just every job's going away, all these knowledge workers are going away, or the entry levels are going away, or whatever statements are made, and it's by not by one person, it's by a lot of people, including leaders, company leaders as well. And I think what the problem with those statements is, while some of that may be true, it doesn't help just to say, hey, all this kind of jobs are going away. Paralegals are going away. So what should people do? What do people do to prepare them? So that's the other part of the conversation we have to have. is, okay, so you know what? We may not have paralegals as we know it, or pick your job. Maybe we'll still have plumbers, right? But we may not have paralegals. So what does the legal profession look like, and how do you prepare yourself to evolve and grow and shift and maybe make some substantial change if your kind of role does change or is eliminated, but new things come about?
That's so one of the frustrating things I encounter when I talk to these companies, especially the tech companies, about AI and its impact on jobs. They will say to me invariably, well, it's going to create new types of industries. It's not going to just eliminate type X job, but it will bring in type Y. And I'll say, well, give me an example. Give me a specific example in the vertical market, say the legal profession, and how that might play out. And I get nothing but vague responses. Because I said, and in fairness to the people who are not answering, maybe they don't know, or they think it will evolve organically within the job or within the industries.
Certainly. I mean, I believe, John, that there will be jobs in companies we can't imagine. I mean, there will be things created that are now possible that will be created out of the opportunity, but other things will be, I don't know if I would say evolutionary. It's kind of evolutionary and revolutionary at the same time. In my world, I think about the software development environment and, developers moving from coders to more orchestrators and communicators and using tools that more look like something like a StarCraft resource management, game than it is a line of code editor. And same thing for developers or maybe workflow engineers, whatever it might be. But I think that's what you have to kind of paint for people is this is the skills that are transforming when you have those AI capabilities. So first of all, invest in AI, your own skills of using AI, because you probably won't make the transition without having some of those to begin with.
And if we could, oh, sorry. If we go back to the messaging for a second, what's ironic to me is that I get to talk to CMOs regularly, and we're talking CMOs of CrowdStrike, Dynatrace, Snowflake, Infinidat, Trellix, you name it. All of them leaning heavily into Gen AI and agentic AI. They're seeing a lot of value. They're already seeing ROI. So the fact that the messaging is inconsistent is just ironic to me, that the CEOs like an Andy Jassy would phrase what he said in the way that he said it. Just Wednesday of this week on the Today Show, they were talking about AI. And I was actually, so I tuned in. I was very curious as to what they were going to say about it. Were they going to be negative? Were they going to be neutral or positive? And it ended up being fairly neutral, I would say, which I thought was a good thing in terms of identifying there are going to be jobs that will be replaced, but there's also going to be a lot of opportunities and jobs that we can't even imagine yet. And that message, that tonality is just not out there consistently. And I struggle with that because I see it.
My bullshit meter's off the chart on all this. And here's where it is. All these companies hired immense numbers of people over the years. And so part of this, I think, is them saying, well, we're going to shrink the workforce, juice the stock, and we're going to attribute it to AI. But I don't think that they're anywhere nearly as far along with AI as they think. And maybe they're anticipating some capabilities.
That's 100% correct, Mike. I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, so here's where we are. Today, AI is not necessarily replacing jobs. AI is augmenting people, right? It's not replacing them. That's not to say it won't replace them at some point in the future, and maybe sooner than we think. But for Microsoft, who's already done one round of layoffs based on AI and is announcing or expecting to do another pretty big round based on AI now, saying that AI is replacing those people, that's covering up for some drunken hiring spree during COVID. Right?
Yes. They are all bloated and they overhired.
Yep.
Yes. And they're still cutting that.
Yep. Now, secondly, though, we did a story earlier this week where New York State is now tracking how many jobs are lost to AI. And California is going to take another crack at regulating AI. And, everyone is going to try to put this genie back in the bottle and try to figure, how to control it. That train's left the station, right? It's out of the box. AI is going to do it. I said this, remember when it first came out, the 100 scientists who said it's a threat to humanity and all of these things. The train's left the station. This thing's is already on its path. You could, as Lee Iacocca says, lead, follow, or get out of the way. And so I think, Mitchell, your advice is dead on. Go skill up, upskill yourself on AI, because you know what? When I went to school, they didn't have any web designers. Just saying. And I don't think we're going to have web designers necessarily going forward. I think AI will design your web. But for a brief moment in time, it was a hot little job.
But let's look down the road a little bit. And if New York State wakes up one morning and finds that the unemployment rate is off the charts and they're having to pay all these folks benefits, they're going to come back to the tech companies and say, what did you do here? And how much are you going to kick in to help fund this?
Well, keep in mind those numbers are self-reported by how many jobs are laid off. So are you going to be over or under reporting that as a company?
So imagine that there's to take this a little bit differently. And so imagine that there is a 70, 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds don't have a lot of contact with their family, don't have a lot of reasons to get up in the morning, don't have a lot of ways to communicate, fairly isolated from the world. Imagine there's 19-year-olds who are stuck in college right now, highest suicide rate in the United States, 19-year-olds. And imagine that there's organizations that produce the ability for adoption of things that we don't fully understand yet. Your personal confidant, your personal collaborator that is an AI interaction that lives on a device in your home with you, right? The commercial adoption of this isn't, what's going to lead to the adoption of the industry. Those people have already proven that you're welcome to save about 45 to 50% of people that have had this experience from committing suicide. And so some of the things to think about here are, hey, look, the adoption isn't the fear of AI. It's the fear of humanity. It's the fear of establishing a new, leadership and control over society that no one has a input into. But when you look at some of the abilities and the things that are brought to light here, aside from not being doom and gloom, there's an example of a trade craft here that hasn't been built yet. So you don't need a psychiatrist with, 20 years of such and such. You have the ability to have somebody that knows you in the context of all your conversations to interact with you almost like a friend. That's a job that doesn't exist today. And those are the types of opportunities that are available. But, to Lisa's point, and Shimmy, you too, these aren't clearly illustrated yet because they don't exist yet. And I'm not sure we spent enough time thinking about that translation of the turn down the economy, people doing something about layoffs for AI and what these new opportunities might be.
Yep. I mean, look what Chris Blask is doing with his Lumina partner, as he calls her. I don't know if her's the right word, the right pronoun, but anyway, it's pretty cool stuff. And I think we're going to see more of that. We'll see more of it. Anyway, certainly a lot going on, and I'm sure we're going to discuss this again. But for now, let's take a quick break here on The Gang, and we're going to come back and AWS's big cyber show, security show, Reinforce, not Reinvent, was this week. Mitch, I think you were on the scene, and let's talk some security.
Discover TechStrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with TechStrong Group.
Hey folks, we're back, and Mitch and I were both in Philadelphia at the AWS Reinforce conference, and there's been some criticism level that AWS and all the cloud service providers for hiding a little bit too much behind shared responsibility, but it looks like, to me at least, that AWS stepped up its game considerably, and it's making it easier to both see where the vulnerabilities are, how critical they are, and in some cases, proactively going out to prevent them. So, Mitch, you were there with me. What was your take on what was going on here?
Well, I think you coined the term right. I think in one of your articles was a bevy of announcements, and of course, AWS has never been known for underwhelming us with a number of announcements. There's always a lot of them. Probably the biggest one, frankly, was Amy Herzog, who came out as the new CISO for AWS. She has been with AWS, I think, about maybe a couple of years, and comes out of MITRE and VMware and some other experiences. Chris Betts, the former CISO, left. So somewhat unexpectedly on his terms. He's going to start something new, but we don't know what that is yet. And Amy had 3 weeks to prepare to give the keynote, to give a 2.5-hour keynote. It was pretty remarkable. She did a fantastic job, and I think will be a great CISO for her. There were a lot of announcements, and some of them, like you said, Mike, they were kind of filling in the gaps, but more shoring up, pulling information together. They announced a revamped AWS Security Hub about identifying vulnerabilities. They did a AWS Shield service, which is more of a dashboard around configuration mistakes and things that are happening with they can identify with Amazon Q. There's a network firewall to be able to, you'll appreciate this, Alan, to do more automatic responses to traffic. That sounds like an IDS, IPS argument again. Having PTSD on that one. So there are a number of things around kind of network security, cloud security, configuration security. There was an announcement with CrowdStrike, with Falcon, being able to kind of integrate better with that service offered by Falcon and AWS for more endpoint security. Fernando Montenegro, the lead of security for Futurum, it did a nice analysis of it, kind of called it sort of undifferentiated heavy lifting, meaning there's other areas where the cloud provider AWS can step in and help customers instead of them having to assemble all the tools into the monitoring management. I think where this is all going is more automation, not just at the firewall level, but across the board. The area that I was also particularly interested in were things around their security incident response process, but also Inspector. It's getting more into the scanning a code when it's pulled, as well as when you push updates to the repository, software composition analysis. It's getting into other people's business as well, but they're also doing things like integrating with GitHub and GitLab in the DevOps space. So it isn't a total go at it alone. So there's some key partnering things that I think were announced there. Anyway, I could take 20 minutes and rattle off all the announcements, and I don't think they're all worthy of that level of conversation, but I think those are the kinds of trends and things that I saw. Mike, what were your thoughts? Did I miss some key things?
Yeah, there were two things that kind of leapt out at me. One is they did a really awesome demo of Amazon Q Developer being used to find vulnerabilities and then create the patch and test the patch and putting that in front of developers. So it was kind of like the ultimate shift left demo for DevSecOps using AI tools. And the second thing is they talked about how they are now have a team that's investigating DDoS attacks and that goes and finds the networks where the spoofs are coming through, and then actually calls those people and says, hey, your system has been compromised. And if they don't respond, then they go down the next level and they go after their DNS. And if they don't get that, then they go down to the local telecom company and say, hey, you got to cut these guys off. And so they were kind of suggesting that was going to become a bigger model for them, and they were going to apply this to other things besides DDoS. And it's felt like, finally somebody was getting aggressive about this stuff. So those are the two things that leaked out at me.
Fred, I got a question for you. As the CEO of a cyber company, you hear about what Amazon is doing to do a better job with cloud security. Do you consider that friend or foe? Is that competition? Is that someone you work with? Can they do a better job? I mean, typically Amazon rolls out things that are 80-20. They're 80% of what a private solution is at 20% of the price. And for some people, that's enough. How do you view you listening to this report, Fred?
I think it's great. I don't fear anything that Amazon's doing. I would say it's long overdue. And as you said, right, it's typically roll out a capability and, sort of craft your own, way of utilizing it. The challenge is, and a lot of this stuff sort of rolls up into the cloud security posture management problem space, which, Amazon's getting eaten alive by their direct competitors for this. Similarly to the development life cycle with, a GitHub that's already doing the vast majority of this. It's a little bit of, I've got to meet the market where the market is. And I like a lot of the ideas that make it easier to, build infrastructure, to validate your code is secure, to deploy code successfully, and to operate your security controls as a practitioner. So, when you provide services to any of your customers and having the nice, signed paper that says you're SOC 2 compliant, terrific. Shared responsibility? No, there's none of that. So this opportunity allows people that build software, build services for customers to not only do a better job with what they already have, but it empowers folks that don't have a team to do those things to make it more successful for them. So I think it's terrific. I think it's long overdue. How valuable it becomes over time, I think, is what the market's going to dictate, but I'm thrilled to see it. It's about time.
Friend, there was also another angle that I'd love to get your opinion on, because while AWS makes its network and security services open enough to people to tweak themselves if they're so inclined, they were just suggesting that was a pointless exercise because people can't respond fast enough to the attacks that are coming out there, and they might as well just lean on AWS to automate that whole thing end to end for them. And there's not a lot of point because humans can't update the firewalls fast enough, can't detect the attacks fast enough, and the whole thing needs to be automated in real time. So it was time to move on from network and security operations constructs.
That sounds awesome. Heavy eye roll. Everybody says that. No one does. The problem that we have isn't the largest problem that we have isn't whether or not there is dynamic asymmetric attacking happening all day long. It does. That's what happens on the cloud infrastructure in a public cloud provider. But the challenge is that once a thing is compromised, you have 49 minutes for that to be broken out of and to expand laterally and do other things. If we said that really is just something that the cloud provider should handle, and we know that 60% of the vulnerabilities on the KEV, the exposures and vulnerabilities list for known exploited vulnerabilities are cybersecurity vendors, what makes a cloud provider any different? So I don't buy into that at all. But I do believe that having more tools available to make better decisions is super important. I'd love to see some of the things they talk about around Kubernetes and container security and things that help influence that. They have services that don't offer that today. So if you use EKS, for example, please help me go back to the to the base images that you provide and make sure that those things are secure from the ground up. So let's mind the kitchen before we start talking about the front of the house.
Guard Duty now it supports EKS, but that's about the only thing they said about EKS.
Yeah, exactly. There was one interesting use case, and this wasn't necessarily talked about as an announcement, but as I was going around and talking to different AWS people, meeting with some folks, something that I wasn't really that familiar with, it was probably rolls right off the tongue for Fred, but this idea of it's called domain generation algorithm. So in other words, it's automated generation of domain names that they do on a very short interval, and that's what they use to attack from new domains. And then over time, the cloud providers, others can start to identify that those are actually being used for nefarious purposes and cutting those off. But then the bad guys are using more generative AI to create more familiar types of generated names. So it's not less obvious that those are generated through algorithms. But I was talking to some folks about this is a good place where you bring together automation, you bring together machine learning because you have so much data in very short intervals that you can start to identify these more and then implement that into their DNS firewall, into Guard Duty and tools like that. So you can kind of see the combination of technologies. Maybe it's a little bit of sausage making, but I found that interesting. Okay, that's a real use case where AI in this case, machine learning is being used to combat kind of Gen AI generated attacks.
The one thing I did continue to feel is there's too many damn SKUs. I can't keep track of all the products and all the things that these things do. And I'm kind of like, can we just make this simpler and be better?
That was a common question in our meetings. It's like, so is that a new SKU or is that part of an existing one?
AI will solve that. Don't worry. We're gonna start tracking SKU reduction caused by AI. Yeah, I think Vermont's signing up for that one. Anyway, guys, good way to end our Friday. Have a great weekend. My gang members, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for watching us. We, as usual, have a full TechStrong TV schedule behind us. We'll be back Monday with a fresh gang show. But until then, on behalf of John, Lisa, Fred, Mitch, Mike, and myself, have a great weekend, everyone. We're out of here.